Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and today is April 3rd, 2022, and in this video, we're going to be discussing Ivan Lendl's secret weapon that he used to completely baffle John McEnroe and turn his head-to-head against him around back in the mid to late 1980s. Now, before we get into this topic, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you're new to this channel, to please take a minute to hit the subscribe button down below. That'll keep you notified of any time we release additional content like this. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to share this video with your friends. All right, guys, so without further ado, let's get into it. So I'd like to start this video off by giving a little bit of backstory into the career of both McEnroe and Lendl. Of course, both of these guys were two of the most dominant players to come out of the 1980s. Lendl and McEnroe would actually play each other 36 times through the course of their career, and they had one of the most interesting rivalries, in my opinion, because there were a lot of twists and turns in their rivalry, which made it very interesting. It would start off with John McEnroe winning their first two matches back in 1980. His second win over Lendl would actually come at the 1980 US Open, which he would, of course, go on to win. And then in 1981 and 1982, Ivan Lendl would defeat John McEnroe 7 consecutive times. Now, of course, it goes without saying that after losing to Lendl 7 times, McEnroe really needed to change something up in his game. And luckily for McEnroe, Don Budge would pull him off to the side and would say, "Hey John, you got to start playing more aggressive when you're playing against Lendl. He's killing you from the baseline." And McEnroe would take Budge's advice. He would start to be more aggressive, start to come in more against Lendl, and it worked. He would go on to win 8 of the next 9 matches against Lendl. And then going into the 1984 French Open final, he was actually 10-8 head-to-head wise against Lendl, and he was considered to be the huge favorite to win this match. Now, McEnroe would start the final off really well. He would capture the first 2 sets, and Lendl was kind of just going through this bad phase where he was almost beating himself a little bit. McEnroe was really playing well. He was just totally zoned in, totally locked in, and it seemed like it would be almost impossible for Lendl to come back from this because McEnroe was playing so well. But what wound up happening was McEnroe had a really bad game that came late in the 3rd set, and he kind of became rattled by this. And it wound up turning things around for Lendl, who was able to win the 3rd set, and then Lendl came back to win the 4th and the 5th to win his first Grand Slam title. Now, even despite losing the French Open to Lendl, McEnroe was still in really, really good form for the rest of that year. He would go on to win Wimbledon by destroying Jimmy Connors in the finals, and then he would face off against Lendl again in the final of the 84 US Open, where McEnroe would easily defeat Lendl on this occasion. Now, 1985 was a very interesting year for these guys because Lendl would struggle throughout a lot of 1985. He would kind of have up and down results. He would lose in the finals of the French Open to Mats Wilander, so of course he wasn't able to retain his title there. And then McEnroe would lose to Kevin Curran in the quarterfinals of Wimbledon. So McEnroe was also having some form issues back then. Now, they would meet in the finals of the US Open, and they were both really looking for that spark, if you will, to kind of prove that 1985 was a good year for them. And Lendl's game had changed a little bit in the years since. He started working with Tony Roche because Roche had some of the best volleys of his time period back in the 1960s. He was an outstanding volleyer, and Lendl had hoped that with Roche's influence, he would be able to someday win Wimbledon. Now, that never happened for Lendl, but the important thing here is that because he was working with Roche, his volleys were much more solid, and he was able to use this against McEnroe. And McEnroe's form wasn't quite as good in the finals of the 1985 US Open as it had been the year before. So Lendl was able to get the win here against McEnroe to win his second Grand Slam title. And from that point forward, McEnroe was really never able to stay with Lendl. I think he did beat him one more time, maybe in 1989, but for the most part, he was usually outclassed by Lendl going forward. If you look at Ivan Lendl's career, he always focused on improving what he had. He started off with some weaknesses in his game. His volleys weren't the best. His serve could be dodgy at times because he had such a high ball toss, but he was always looking for ways to get better. I think in some ways, Lendl kind of reminds me a little bit of Novak Djokovic, because if you think about it, when Djokovic was first getting started with his career, he had a whole lot of weaknesses in his game. You know, his forehand wasn't the best, his serve wasn't the best. He had to bring in Todd Martin to really work on his serve. He had to bring in Todd Woodbridge to work on his net game. And the thing that impressed me the most about Djokovic is that he kept looking for ways to keep getting better. And it's the same thing with Lendl. You know, he brought in Tony Roach to make his volleys better. He kept looking for ways to improve. And I really think that that says a lot about Lendl, and you can see it in his results. You know, his results kept getting better the older he got. And that's something that I think all of us can learn from in that sense. Anyway, guys, that does it for this video. Please leave me a comment in the comment section down below and let me know what you think was the biggest strength of Ivan Lendl's game. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next one.